welcome to another episode of Don't Shit on the Bus. We have a returning guest, which other than Neil, I think this is the first time we've had this, but that is because Joey has so much to talk about and I have so much to learn. He knows a lot of things that I do not know, and I want to learn more about it. And more importantly, I want you guys to learn about it with me, go on this journey together. Since last week, we did get a new patron. Ian, welcome to the Patreon. Thank you so much for the support. That money goes towards making this podcast possible because Connor is not cheap. So thank you guys so much for that. But let's get right into it because, we'll talk a little bit about what we talked about last week first. And Joey, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. That was fun last week, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, if it was bad last week, would this not have happened? We would have had to edit everything. You're like, man, that sucks.
I would have just ghosted.
No. Well, I know where you work, so I don't know if I could get in, but I know where you work.
Start leaving Yelp reviews.
Yeah. Oh, who's this AE? Why is he all over everything? Yeah, but thank you so much for coming back. Last week we kind of talked about, and if you haven't checked out the episode, check it out. The broad picture of what happens at a local music venue. And this isn't just any local music venue that we're using as an example. We are using the forum more or less when we talk about the stuff here. And that's just because that is where Joey is currently, but he's also pulling experiences from his touring world and the other venues he's worked at. So he has a lot of experience under his belt, and it's just cool to hear on such a pro level. So with that being said, today, what are we going to talk about, Joey? Can you intro it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think today we're going to talk about just the venue and the jobs that exist within the venue and how those are applicable to touring and maybe some bleed over between venue work and touring work, and what are good jobs that you could take from the tour to get into venue work, and what are some good jobs from the venue to get into touring work. And I think that they cross over very well. So this could be very informative, not just to people looking to get into touring, but I like to think that we could also appeal to people maybe looking to get away from touring and get off the road and wondering where they could take their skills off the road.
Yeah, I know it seems crazy to people who are trying to get into touring. It's like, well, you're touring. It's the best job in the world. Why would you ever want to stop? And if you've listened to any of these episodes, if you're touring, that's pretty much all you get to do. Sometimes, of course, there's corner cases of maybe you work for Elton John and you're touring for 3 years and it's off and on, a month here, a month there. Yeah, it might be more sustainable, but a lot of the times touring is just that. So if you want to have a family or you want to have hobbies or just a balanced life, it doesn't always lend itself to that. But working at a local venue might. And the barrier of entry is a little bit lower, right? It's not like, and the repercussions aren't as severe. It's more like a normal job, I would say.
Yeah, something you could, show up to. You could hold multiple jobs and work at the venue. Something I did when I was touring is I always had side gigs between tours, and I was usually a cook somewhere, a valet parker, and I worked at a local music venue of some sort. So skill sets that kind of kept me afloat between touring, especially when I was starting off, and it wasn't like back-to-back tours. It was a tour every, I'd be home for 3 months because I didn't have those connections yet. And what would I do in that time? I'd usually work as an usher at the local venue, which was like the Palladium or the Wiltern.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And then I always worked as a cook as well since high school because then I could eat.
Oh, that's great. You're a cook?
Yeah. Well, I
want to tour with you.
It's one of those things. It's like you cook professionally and it then don't like to cook in your personal life,
Oh, okay, it ruins it. You make a job out of something you enjoyed, and then
Yeah.
I think we all have had experience with that. Everybody thinks like, oh, you're gonna do what you love for your living, and then sometimes people do that, and it becomes not enjoyable. It's definitely tricky.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. So yeah, I'm excited to learn about today. We're gonna go. Let's talk about, before we talk about the specific jobs, we've got about 10 of them, and we'll tell you, what's required to get into them, what you're going to do at the venue, how they operate on a day-to-day basis, just so when you go to a venue, you're like, hey, I want to apply for this job. This is the one I have skills for. This is the one that makes sense. You'll have a little bit more of a roadmap. But before that, we're going to tell you the benefits from just existing in a venue, regardless of the job. Of course, if you're a security guard at a venue, you're going to get better at security. That's a no-brainer. But there's other benefits. And, I'll start it off. One of the biggest ones is just understanding how a tour and a venue kind of function and work together. They kind of coexist. I think that's a big one. Just seeing the gears turn. I don't know, what else do you think is like a benefit of just working at a local venue?
Yeah, I think anytime like you have a job and you understand the depth of the job, it makes you that much better. So, venue experience, you're working at a venue, you really understand why door times are important. When I started touring, I had minimal like front of house venue work. And I was advancing shows and people were like, and we were in a van. So, it was
Yeah.
a 5-piece band in a van. We could load in an hour. And people were like, when do you want to load in? We're available starting at this time. And I never understood why the time window was so big. I was like, yeah, we'll be there an hour before, we're good. And it wasn't until I got into the bigger touring did I understand like, oh, there's the bigger your tour gets, the more time you need to load in, obviously. But that's one of those examples where I was in a position and I was getting asked a question and I was able to provide an answer, but I didn't know the reasoning why so much. I mean, I knew it took us it took us an hour to load in. Easy, done. But why were they asking me, do I need 4 hours to load into a bar set? Like, so anyways.
No, I like that. It's really interesting to know exactly what's going on the other side. It can help you make decisions better that, don't affect people negatively.
Exactly. And you're on tour and you're using local runners. So say you have a local runner position before you ever go on tour and you know what it is to be a local runner and how stressful and difficult that could be. And, getting around town, traffic, dealing with money and receipts and the whole 9 yards, you could then better understand. So when you're in a position to ask a runner to go do something, you truly understand what you're asking of them. It's just not asking them to go to the store and get milk. You're asking them to leave the venue at peak ingress times. And where are you going to park when you get back? Do you have the appropriate parking passes to get in at this time instead of at load in time? And, it just goes into it. Just the deeper knowledge you have of any subject is going to make you overall a better person at your job. And I think any kind of touring work, the more knowledge you have, the better.
Yeah, and I can kind of relate to what you just said. Like a light bulb went off in my head. Connor and I work together very closely on this podcast, and sometimes we're like, Connor, we need to make a TikTok clip or something every week for this. Let's start doing that. And I don't know how long that takes him. So every time he starts a new task, we have like a meeting to basically run through like, how long did that take? What did you have to do? So I can understand and he can teach me, like when I request something like this, is it taking up half a day of his time casually and he's just doing it and sucking it up? Or is it something he's whipping up in 10 minutes? And if we wanted to do 2 more, we could.
Right.
And it just helps me know my decisions make sense.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, once you understand everything that's going on at a venue, you'll be able to communicate with the venue so much more effectively when touring. And I know you kind of glossed over that just now, but for every job, if you're working security at a venue and then somebody on tour comes through and you have to do a security briefing, you'll understand what you need to tell them because you'll know what it's like to have been in their position. And that goes for almost every job. It's just so much easier when you know more to be able to do your job better. And some jobs, when you get to the top, like production manager or tour manager, they really need to have a pretty good look. They don't need to know how to tune a drum set or restring a guitar, but they need to know what those things are and how long they take so that when they're moving pieces around, they can kind of understand who needs to be where and for how long and what makes sense. And I don't know. I like that.
Yeah. And when you're in a venue, you really see the same thing over and over and over again. Like, let's say I did 50 meet and greets in the last year. From those 50 meet and greets, I obviously know what works and what doesn't. And every artist is different and every requirement is different. But I know that it's going to be more difficult to move an artist around the building than it is to move a crowd of people around the building.
Ooh, I like that. That's so simple, but that makes sense. Keep going.
Yeah, and just anything. Like, we get tours that come up and they're, we're going to do a meet and greet after the show. Anybody's welcome. It's like, that doesn't work. Why do I know that doesn't work? Because we've done it before and you're going to be here for 6.5 hours after the show and you're going to,
Artists do that on that level?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You'd be surprised.
They must be crazy. I'm already surprised. I don't even know who it is. I'm surprised.
Yeah, there's plenty of A-list artists out there that are super humble and love what they do. And, sometimes like family shows and we do MMA boxing a lot and regular boxing, they'll go out and say, oh, one of the fighters wants to do a meet and greet as if it's just like nothing, right? But so working in a venue, you learn what works, what doesn't work. You learn how to adapt. You learn what different people are looking for, and your variable of the building is staying the same. And the variable that's changing is what the activation itself. So you get to learn a
Yeah.
lot, from red carpets all the way down to simple handshake meet and greets. But you'll see a lot of the same thing, and you could really pick up what works and doesn't work. And also in that time, you're just meeting, when you're at the venue, you're meeting a ton of people. Fortunately enough, being here in LA, we have all top agents, top managers, top promoters coming to our shows. And just overall, those people have an understanding that you're working on behalf of them, and they see you busting your butt and say you're helping with a VIP, and you help the right people, or you just present yourself in the right way, and somebody takes notice of that. It's very easy for you to start a conversation with somebody that might change your life, whether it be take you on tour, whether it be give you a job somewhere else in the industry, or put you forward for another type of job. But I think it's like, I would rather be doing a low level job within the industry that I want to create a career in than a high level job outside the industry. Because at least I'm making my time pay for itself. It's valuable at that point. The time that I'm investing in my work. Like I said, when I wasn't on tour, I was working as an usher and front of house kind of stuff at local venues. And like, obviously I didn't want to be an usher. Like, that wasn't my career goal, but being an usher allowed me to be in the venue and work hand in hand with people who were doing jobs that I wanted to do. And I'd rather be that much closer to them and learning from them, even if it's learning from afar and doing a job that I necessarily wasn't the most stoked about. But again, then I learned that I didn't like being an usher, and I actually liked being an usher. I'm not knocking that. It's a very good position to get into for, getting your foot in the door at a venue, is usher work, front of house work, that kind of stuff. But we'll talk a little bit more about that for sure.
I think what you said, and even just meeting people who come to the show, whether it be a manager or an agent, and just learning how to kind of talk the talk and hang out and not stick out and see how other people interact and how people treat artists like people and what's polite and what's not polite. I mean, it can be simple stuff like, hey, don't go in front of an artist in the catering line.
Yeah,
like that's
exactly.
or anybody in the catering line for a matter. But, don't, an artist is walking to stage, don't walk right in front of their line to the stage. There's just like little things like this that you could probably list off a bunch that you can kind of infer like, hey, yeah, I probably shouldn't be rude to people. But that goes to a pretty strict level when everybody's working together and it's such, everything's on the clock and everything's so important. And, some of these artists are in the venue probably for a total of an hour and a half. They're just playing their show, and everything that happens matters so much while they're there. And you don't want to be the person to mess it up.
Right. And you also, like, for instance, being stage left after the artist ends a show, you're going to have, and tour security has told you, even guest passes that we had backstage at the beginning of the show, nobody's allowed back here. Now you're that frontline person, right? And you're learning how to mitigate those kinds of confrontations when you have very important people who they thought they had the correct credential to go where they're trying to go. And you're sitting here telling them, no, you can't. And they're like some of the top people. Like, you learn how to deal with stuff and repercussions of your actions, and how to not say no, and how to work around, and how to help people feel like, you're not like, get away, nobody's allowed back here.
Navigate correctly without making somebody feel like an asshole or being a dick.
Exactly.
It's delicate, right?
Yeah.
You're dealing with a lot of egos too, like, not to be rude, but like, there's a lot of people there who make more money than everybody in the whole venue. You know what I mean? Like, and not to say that they're more important or anything, but they pay attention to everything. Yeah. Everything matters, and a little thing the wrong way is a big thing to them. Yeah. And it's just something you got to learn. I don't know if everything I'm saying is fair to say. You can always correct me if I'm wrong. You're the professional. I'm just taking from my experience.
No, there's people that, they show up, and the smallest inconvenience that's not truly an inconvenience, it's something we're making everybody do, and they have a phone call directly to the top. And when that phone call to the top is going to the top 1% of the music industry, like, you better make sure you're doing the job right. And so maybe that's a little bit of an extreme situation for like this conversation, but at the same time, the music world and the touring music world is very small. So even if you're in a venue for, say, a year, you're going to get to know people on a first name basis just by being around them. And not every music industry connection needs to be like, hey man, give me a job. Like so many of my friends work in the music industry because we have the same ideas and the same passions and we like the same stuff. It's not because they're in the music industry I'm going to be their friends, but I've found some very, very good friends who happen to work in the music industry, and we've found great friends because we have so much in common. So and that kind of goes along with like mentorship and stuff like that. Like you could find mentors in the music industry that have nothing to do with your job. They're more or less people who you become friends with, and they're in one world of the music industry and you're in your own, and it's just it's a small world, so all those small connections definitely work.
Yeah, everything matters. It's networking. You're trying to increase your luck. You're trying to be around people that are working on the same journey as you, and help each other out.
Yeah,
and that's great. Okay, so now that we kind of know what a venue does, what's the purpose of getting a job there, why the hell somebody who's trying to tour might want to get a job that stays in one place. Let's talk about some of the good starting jobs. Like, you want to work at a venue, you've never toured, but you have this desire, this burning desire to work in the music industry. That's good. That's why we're all here. What are some good starting jobs for people, coming into the industry, blank slate? I think is that the right saying? Blank slate?
Definitely.
Clean palette?
Clean
I don't
palette.
know. But list them off for us. Let's hear them.
Sure. I think some of the most directly coordinated would be production coordinators, VIP jobs, security jobs. Definitely for like a higher end tour, security is very important. And you see a lot of people get pulled from venues to go on tour in the security department. Box office is
cool.
a great place. Every venue has a box office, so that's a great place to learn. And then, of course, like stagehands, learning is a very specific task and just the back of house type of stuff. But production coordinator is like 1-to-1, probably your best bet.
Yeah, what is it? What a production coordinator, we've talked about it on a touring end. Is it the same at a venue?
Yeah.
What's the vibe?
Yeah, production coordinator. So, and the other side of things is like you could be a production coordinator for the promoter. You could be a production coordinator for the venue. You could be a production coordinator for the tour. It's all kind of the same thing, just maybe a little bit specialized on who's getting what request. Production coordinator for the venue, they're going to be making sure helping. I don't want to make it sound like a human resources job, but they're going to be doing a lot of the scheduling and the human resources of the stagehands, and they're overseeing the stagehand department, whereas their job, the production manager, is overseeing like the entire production side of the tour. So production coordinator could be doing anything from onboarding stagehands to setting up activations and overseeing activations, ancillary activations. Like oftentimes we have sponsorship activations, or we'll do like a red carpet out in the parking lot, and our production manager will be taking care of the show inside, and the production coordinator will be basically doing the production manager job, but for that smaller activation. So it's a very good.
It's kind of like training.
Yeah, 100%.
It's really good training, it sounds like.
Yeah, and you touch so much, and in your production, that word production, you could, when it comes to a venue, you associate production with everything back of house. Everything from the downstage edge back is production. Everything from the downstage edge forward to the house is the house. So if you're going to be working at a venue, the back of house is where you would want to be, which is you would get the most applicable experience to going on the road for sure, in production, over arches and sees all that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That job seems so all-encompassing. Every time I hear it, when somebody's like production coordinator, you have to explain what you do after it, because it can literally be anything.
Yeah,
it's such a versatile job.
Yeah.
So if you are, what type of person would be good at that? I feel like very socially advanced, like very able to multitask and handle
problem solving.
That's fun.
I think an overarching skill that you find in people that work in touring and in venues are people that are like very good at puzzles and that understand cause and effect.
Yeah.
And like you give an answer at 1 p.m. How is that going to affect you at 7 p.m.? It's not just like, yeah, you could put that case there. Well, am I going to have to move it again in 6 hours when we're opening up for the...
Yeah. Is it going to cause problems? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, next we've got VIP, and VIP is when an artist has people who paid a premium price to kind of meet them, right? And so the VIP person at a venue, they like set up the area that happens, or what all do they have to do?
Definitely. I think, well, VIP has grown tremendously in the last 5 years, I would say. It went from once every 20 tours would have a VIP activation to every tour has a VIP. Every other tour has a VIP activation.
Big money maker.
Yeah, it's big money maker. And a lot of those VIP jobs on the touring side are sourced out to third parties that specialize in VIP stuff. So it's very often that we're working with a third party company to do a meet and greet or a red carpet. And even if you don't have a red carpet or activations, you're still dealing with guest lists and just anything that comes up on tour really that is associated with not the public, anybody that's backstage as a VIP, so.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So that's all over. And for us as a venue, our dedicated department works hand in hand with the event managers to fulfill all the needs, and whether it be from a sponsorship side of things or a VIP activation or an artist request or anything really, red carpets, when we get radio shows in or award shows, our red carpets and our post-show parties are a very big deal. Those are entire activations in and of themselves. They're their own standalone events. So our VIP manager gets to kind of play the role of the event manager where he's overseeing that VIP activation.
So it's a big thing. It's not just like, hey, one every 20 shows, we got 10 people who are going to come after the show and meet Albert.
Right. No.
Now it's like every show, 4:00, 300 kids coming through this door. They all need signatures, a step and repeat, and they need to get into the venue early.
Exactly.
And you're like, all right, go do it.
You nailed that description. That's exactly what it's turned into.
Yes. And if you're a photographer, sometimes you go on tour with an artist and part of your job is to take the VIP photos.
Yeah.
That's all I know. No, that is a good job. And you get the key thing about all these jobs isn't necessarily what you're doing, but it's who you're working with. Mm-hmm. Because that's the theme of this. This is not just a one-man show for any of this. It's all right, I got to work with, VIP has to work with the company that runs the VIP. They've got to work with the venue. They got to work with the artist, the tour manager. And you getting experience working with these people is key. You can't practice that. You need to be in person doing this. That's why working at a venue, this is a big ad for working at venues. Thank you. All venues owe us a thank you.
I mean, I'll say that I wouldn't have been able to tour without my venue experience.
There you go.
Going into, and I got my venue experience on accident. I got it from going to too many shows than what's really good for me. And then I kind of just started, going to all these bar shows when I was in high school and in college, and just getting to know the people and kind of helping out, and then becoming friends with the owners.
Yeah, it was very organic. It sounds like you're like, oh, this just keeps working. I guess I'll keep doing it.
But it provided a lot of knowledge for me to step right in when I needed to. So
no, it's great. Good for you. And I think it's cool hearing about people's stories that they kind of accidentally fell into. I'm a beneficiary of that situation as well. The hard part in the industry, and you will see this on your journey, is creating those because you want them to happen. It's always so much easier, sometimes to just be like, oh, that door's open, let's walk through. But to create those doors and then walk through them can be so much more difficult. And it requires a lot of effort. Okay, so the next one on the list we've got here is security.
Yeah.
If I don't go to the gym, can I be a security guard?
100%.
Yes, sign me up. Let's go. I got black clothes.
Yeah, security is not about fighting people and who can punch the hardest. Security is about situational awareness and understanding human interactions.
I'm out now. After those two qualifications, I am out. Yeah. Anyway, keep going.
No, you definitely, you get people who are big and brawly, and you kind of need that for certain shows. But, 9 times out of 10, security is the last thing that they're going to do is touch somebody. So that's not really what you want in a security person. And security is really great because you're working right next to all the players of a tour. And that's why I say so many times we have security managers get picked from us because they're so good at their job. And this is something that, we talked about you were like, what's as an event manager, what are you so closely related to? And I said the tour manager, but I never talk to a tour manager. I very rarely talk to a tour manager. I always talk to production managers, security managers, and promoters. And the security managers are really I want to say the face of the tour. Tour managers usually don't show up until the artist is there. They usually show up with the artist. And as you should know at this point is that load-in starts hours and hours and hours ahead of time. So we've been in the building for 8 hours before the tour manager ever shows up. And the person I'm coordinating with is the security manager. And the security manager's job is to facilitate everything that the tour manager has asked for, which is what the artist is asking for. And security personnel work hand in hand with the artist.
And just to add a little bit of, if anybody got lost there, when Joey is saying security personnel, he's talking about the venue security working with the security manager for the artist.
Yeah.
Just so that everybody's on the same page. Keep going.
Yeah, almost all artists these days who are touring at an arena level will have 1 to 3 security managers with them, if not more. And they are literally, there's like a personal security guard, and then there's a team of venue security guards. And that team comes to the building and coordinates with me and says, okay, this is all the positions we need. I'm working with my security manager on the venue side of things to make sure that all our security positions are filled. And so if you were a security guard working at the venue, you're in those positions where you're guarding the backstage door. You might get asked to guard the principal's dressing room door. You're on the stage guarding the stage, and your job directly affects.
Who's the principal? What's that?
It's another word for the artist, basically.
Oh, I never knew that.
Whoever's
I was like, are we at school? What happened?
Whoever's name's on the marquee or whatever artist, the combination of artists make up.
I never knew that.
It's kind of like a politically correct way to say somebody's arriving or departing, or to describe them when
like
they're
the
moving.
Principal is here.
Yeah. Instead of the artist, or
Kanye's here, guys. Yeah. He's here. All right, come on, chill out. Sound professional.
Yeah. But as a security guard, your job directly affects, like if you failed at your job as a security manager, that means that somebody got backstage when they shouldn't have. If you did good at your job as a security manager, somebody who was trying to get backstage got stopped. And of course the tour is going to know what's going on when it comes to security. It's probably what they pay attention to the most closely at a venue is the venue security.
What is the, sorry, I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
It's not important. What is the required quota of photographers crying by the end of the night because of security required for a successtold show? How many do you need?
All of them.
All of them. All right, cool. Just making sure.
All the photographers to be pushed at least one time, be told to not go where they were told they could go. No.
Just anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So of course the tour is going to be paying directly close attention to security, and the eyes are physically on the security guards, therefore easy to get noticed and picked up. And again, it's not about how big and bad you are. It's about how you handle yourself and de-escalate situations and foreshadow and are able to see when things are going bad and what's going to come of that. And what, it's a very complex job with large repercussions, let's say. Yeah, it's a good job to get into. It's definitely hand in hand with an artist 9 times out of 10.
I've got a story related to what you just said, if that's all right.
Yeah.
When I was at just talking about security guards being ready for everything and areas I didn't know, I was with an artist I wasn't on tour with, but an artist we were playing a festival with. I was riding in their car to stage at a festival in Europe. And it was like security guard, principal, me, and like the driver. And we were talking to the security guard. One of the artists I was on tour with was with us as well. And we're like asking them, like, what happens if like a bomb goes off at this venue? Like, what do you do? And they're like, we always have a car, and I forget the name they had for the car, but they always have a car backstage. So if anything happens at the venue, artist goes right in the car and straight to the embassy. Just right away. They're out. And I was like, cool. And they have a path for them and everything, and then they handle the rest of everything. And I was like, never thought about that, but that's awesome. And I thought that was really interesting.
I mean, you asked like what's some of the stuff you do when you're not on show days. Like that's exactly it. It's like creating escape plans for the artists. And, we know our venue best, so they look to us to give them the best information. So,
Yeah.
Depending on where different artists are staying in the building and where their dressing rooms are, there's a million different situations. We don't have to go into it, but, security is
Security. We don't need to talk specifics.
yeah,
I agree.
Don't need to show all the open doors at all. But no, it's now more than ever that security is like so crucial, and now more than ever, artists and camps are really paying attention to it, and it's a very, very important job, and it's really quite a cool job when you get into logistics. And it's just like basically there's going to be a security guard at every single place the artist goes. So that could be kind of fun if you think of it that way.
Depending on the artist, yes. I was going to ask you, just for everybody listening, I think you mentioned it 3 or 4 times, but getting pulled from the venue, which is basically you're saying like, hey, this person did such a good job at their job that the touring crew noticed, or the artist was like, I want them. Mm-hmm. We need them on the bus. We need to tour with them. Have you guys had this happen at the Forum?
All the time.
Or do you know?
All the time.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's very common. Great. I think it's a little bit luck of the draw. And, most tours, when they're on the road, they're already toured, they're already crewed up. And it's usually a result of somebody quitting or something happening where somebody got sick and they need to fill a position. They're like, hey, man, your guy did such a great job last night. Can we take him? It's like, of course.
Yeah. COVID.
Yeah.
But no, that's cool to hear. And I'm sure that maybe I'm going out on a limb. It probably happens more often at your venue than others because you have it's like such a good venue and you have such qualified people doing their jobs there.
Yeah.
So, it's not every venue people go to, but if you want to get hired to tour, you have to work in LA. No, I'm just kidding. But that's awesome. That's great to hear that. I don't know too many stories like that, but I love hearing it. Security. Actually, a way more interesting job than I ever realized. Usually they're just my enemies. So, I've learned over time that they're actually some of the most badass people ever. They just look scary, but they're usually so kind. Box office, second enemy after security. The other people who tell you no at a venue, the box office. You bring your ID, you're all ready, you got your gear with you, or you're ready to hang out with your friends, and they tell you no, you're not on the guest list. Well, that might not be box office, but what does box office do at a venue?
Yeah, box office is taking care of ticket sales and, a lot of guest services and guest interface. So they're coordinating quite a bit with the customer, and they're coordinating quite a bit with the artist's camp and the promoter when it comes to like building a show and taking care of that kind of stuff. But learning box office is very applicable because it's the basis of like all things touring, more or less. Like anything about it at the end of the day is based around how many tickets have been sold, because you're not going to be on tour if you're not selling tickets, right? So
you're the most important job. Like without you, there is no show.
And then we have stagehands as well. Stagehands are good. You could learn a very specific job. You could just learn how production works if you're not a musically inclined person and didn't grow up around equipment. You could really learn what equipment does what and where it goes where and what's it's called and what's its purpose, and that's easy.
The stagehands just are kind of like the physical movement of all the pieces, right?
Yeah, hired labor to set up and tear down all the specialized equipment. So unloading trucks, building stages, building lighting rigs, building audio rigs, all that good stuff. Loading in, loading out, cleaning the stage, pretty much anything.
Well, that's great. Okay, now you know the entry-level jobs. That's good because everybody's got to start somewhere, or maybe you're more experienced and you just want something a little more relaxing. Start with some of those jobs. Maybe relaxing is not the best word, but not as specialized. I doubt it's going to be relaxing. But the theme or the concept here is if you're coming from touring, you might be able to start on a job that's a little bit more complicated or that you need to have some prior knowledge for. And I think the next jobs we're going to talk about kind of fall into that category. I mean, what do you think? What's up here? Give me the lowdown.
Yeah, I think when you come off touring, I think people that go down the road of touring and when they've reached the point they want to stop touring, it's a very common question of like, where do I take all these skills that I have? They're so niche. And coming to a venue, is a great way to take those skills from the road and directly apply them to a job, so you're hitting the ground running. And the positions we talked about are earlier were positions to maybe get your foot in the door. Let's say you have the skill set, you could then come in to a venue and be a production manager, an event manager. We keep talking about VIP, but VIP manager. And then you have operations managers, which are the guys taking care of the physical work inside the building.
So instead of coordinator, you come in a little bit higher up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And most of those jobs that we just listed, it's like any position on tour is going to be well-rounded enough that you could directly lead into those positions.
All right. You heard it here, touring friends. If you want to get off the road, those are the ones you want to do.
Yeah.
Those are the areas you can go to. But let's talk about a few of the more demanding jobs, the ones that require a little bit of schooling, maybe not in a formal way, but you have some experience on the road.
Yeah. So, and the jobs that you could come in off the road that are demanding and you need a skill set, we keep talking about production as direct correlation. So production manager, directors of production, it's when you get into these jobs, it's very much like a corporate gig where there's supervisor, coordinator, manager, senior manager, director, vice president. And most of these positions, and the higher you go up the chain, the more broad your obligations are. But, production manager, you have to know what you're doing. So that's a great position to come in off the road, whether you're production manager on the road, tour manager on the road, even down to any kind of tech work on the road. You could come into a building and be a production manager and understand how things are supposed to work. Accounting. Okay. There's a lot of accounting personnel on the road these days. And obviously one of the biggest things for our building and any building is accounting and keeping track of the money. And this is actually in a position that I talk to a lot of people who are in college and are like, oh, I would love to work in live entertainment, but I got an accounting degree. Like, I can't work in live entertainment. It's like, yeah, actually, we need accountants. Like, you're a perfect applicant. Come work at the building.
We are a business too.
Yeah, we're a business. That's exactly right. So in booking, they're the ones booking the venue. That's a very skilled set that exists in the building that is a great position to get into. Every building needs a booker, and most buildings' general managers are usually their head bookers.
And who do the bookers work with? The bookers work with the promoters.
Yeah.
And they're like, the promoter comes to the booker and says, hey, I've got this tour package. You want to take it on? It costs this much money. And the booker says, yeah, we have availability. We can do it on these days. And they kind of coordinate everything.
Yeah, the booker's managing our calendar, and they have a list of different acts who are in different stages of trying to confirm dates. So they will coordinate and manage all the relationships with all the different promoters in the area. And they will manage who's getting to do a show and when. So it's a pretty buck stops here kind of position. They're usually the number one. They're also managing the deals. So
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah. They're doing all the deals. They're in charge of the overall success of the building because the number of shows they bring in is going to correlate with how successful the building is. That's like numero uno for sure. Very high level job. Marketing, definitely kind of like these live positions we're talking about, or like we were saying earlier, like the record label side of things. So booking and marketing is very correlated with like the record label management side of things. You're doing all the promotion, you're taking care of social media.
You're saying, just to like break that down, you're saying they're the record label to the band's music. So like this is the back end of the record or the back end of the venue.
Exactly.
To the concert. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, you're promoting the show, you're getting out information like nowadays, whether it's clear bag policies or COVID concerns and this and that, you're doing all the kind of stuff for marketing. There's usually a marketing budget when it comes to a tour where the venue has to spend a certain amount of money marketing the show so that they hold up their end of the obligation to sell tickets. And they're also working directly with photographers and other personnel coming into the building on a marketing level. So
what the hell is operations?
So operations are the men and women that are physically building the stage and setting the tables and setting the chairs and breaking the chairs, setting up the walk-through metal detectors, painting the building, coordinating all maintenance for the building. I personally came up through the operations side, and it was a really good way for me to really understand how a building works. I know how long it takes to build a stage. I know how to build a stage. I know how to operate a forklift. I know when the right piece of equipment needs to be used, because I had to do all that physical work. And inside operations, you have a position. Every building will have a building engineer, which is in charge of like all the HVAC systems and heating and cooling boilers and all that kind of stuff, which is not really something that you have on the road, but it's another position where I have friends that are like, man, your job's so cool. And all I do is HVAC. And I'm like, well, come work over here. We need an HVAC guy.
Come hang out. Yeah. We could be friends.
Yeah. So the building is like a living and breathing entity in and of itself. And we have to care for that building. And that's operations and engineering are the people that make sure the heartbeat keeps going.
Man, I had no idea. And let me just say that we are using a rather large venue for this example, or correct me if I'm wrong, Joey, you're speaking mostly from the forum or the arena you used to work for. When you go down even to a 2,000 cap venue, a lot of these jobs exit, or a lot of these jobs are compiled into one job. So these tasks exist on every level, but they're condensed into one human being, or maybe they aren't as taxing at a lower level, so you don't need a full person's job devoted to it. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely going, not overboard, but we're going in deep so that you can kind of take all this and apply it to every level of it. It would not make sense for us to just do a 200 cap bar, or that's a big bar, a 200 cap club, and use that to explain every level of the venue. So we're kind of starting at the top, and just so you guys understand that, there's not marketing for, well, maybe there is, but there's not, I don't know enough to say what there isn't, but things scale.
Yeah, everything's scaled here, definitely.
Cool. I think that was a really good overview of starting level jobs, the more advanced ones. It kind of gives people a little more of an in-depth view of like, okay, if I want to work at a venue, which direction should I at least start kicking my ball in? Like, where should I head? Whose door do I need to start kicking down to get hired here? And it's cool. I like hearing about your journey on the way as well. I have a few questions for you, but is there anything else that came to mind that you didn't really have a place to put in that you want to talk about? Because I know when I do these things, stuff just starts going.
Well, I definitely thought about the question that you ended the show with last time, asking like, what's something that a tour could do to make my life easier? And the correct answer would have been, don't hide stuff.
Just kidding. Wait. Don't hide stuff. What are people doing?
Like if you know that you need to, like, people who aren't transparent, people on the road who aren't transparent with what's going on are the people that make life so difficult, because we're then dealing with stuff in that moment. Whereas if you advance everything, even if it's a situation that you're going to get kickback on, or is going to be hard to accommodate, if I know ahead of time, I'm going to do everything I can to help you. If I know moment of, my hands are so much more tied.
Yeah, you can't do anything.
So if you're, doing I'm trying to think of a good example. Like
when you said hiding, I was like picturing like literal hiding. I was like, where are they putting what, and what is it? And why are they keeping it there? But this makes so much more sense.
Yeah, just all aspects, whether it's an aspect of the meet and greet, or whether it's an aspect, like say for a meet and greet, if you want to give away merch during your meet and greet, but you're afraid that this knife that you want to give away as a meet and greet, the security is going to have a problem with that. So you try to hide it, and day of, you're like sitting there giving away knives. Obviously that's a very extreme level, but whether it be Zippo lighters or anything. Whereas if I know ahead of time that you have something that we don't want to allow in the building, we could coordinate with you on how to get it to those people after the show. Or we could store that for those people, instead of us finding out that you've given out 100 Zippo lighters and now people are lighting their clothes on fire or throwing them on stage or whatever it may be. Like, we just much rather know everything.
Joey, I need names. I gotta know who brought knives and lighters. I'm just kidding. Yeah, if you'll notice, whenever we tell stories, we don't say names, and that's just a respect thing. When you work I'm serious. Like when I told the backstage story, or I'm sure you're not making all of these examples up. I'm sure they exist somewhere.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but it is part of working in the industry that you just it's not important to the story that you know who it is, and you still get the same communication, and anything more was almost like gossip and frowned upon. So we don't really partake in that. We keep stuff quiet and private because it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I'll actually, Joey, segueing off that, that's a great point, by the way, the hiding thing. I'm going to tell this story without violating the person who did its privacy, even though they probably should. But I did like a live talk, and one of the guests, like, I didn't know, right? It was like a panel, it was 4 of us. And that specific guest told like an incredibly private story with names of the touring personnel that like this level of story they told could put them in jail to college kids. And I was like, what are you doing?
No, man.
And this was somebody that I like had just met, and I was like, oh, maybe we can be like industry friends. But as soon as they told that story, I knew that the public image they were putting off as how professional they were was not, even though they had been in the game for a long time and everything, they were not doing well, because that was such a bad thing. And I even talked to Neil afterwards and tried to be like, what, am I going crazy? He's like, I don't know why that guy told that story. It blew my mind. I was like, this is so inappropriate.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. And that's just not fair. You got to imagine something that people ask me all the time are like, oh, you worked with so-and-so. Were they cool, or were they a dick, or were they not nice? And it's like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what they were. Like, they're their own individuals who are putting themselves in front of thousands of people. So if they don't want their privacy violated, and that means that they don't want to talk to me when they enter the building, that doesn't mean they're a dick. It just means that they're busy and tired and don't want to. So yeah, definitely it's not a cool move to be dropping names and telling stories that,
dude, it was so weird.
Yeah.
I was like in shock, literally. I was like, this is crazy. This is so, anyway. All right, I have a few more questions. This one, we have a lot of photographers on our Patreon. They're amazing people. We've got Legos, who I don't know this person's real name, but that's their name on our Discord. Do most venues have a house photographer? And if so, what is the best way to reach out to venues and eventually become said person?
I think most venues wish they could have a house photographer. I think most tours are way too strict to allow house photographers.
Ooh, can you talk about that without like an appropriate way? Like, I don't need you to talk about anything about the forum and what you're allowed to do, but just in general.
Yeah.
Is there some general knowledge you can talk about in that area?
Yeah. So what's a house photographer versus another photographer coming in to just shoot for the specific show? House photographers.
Why would they not be allowed? Like, what does that mean? Like, how can a venue who has a photographer not be allowed when it's their own venue? It makes sense to me, but a lot of people won't understand that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it has to do with how the tour wants their show captured in a high definition manner, to the point where like those photos could be resold or used in any kind of way. Like a cell phone video is not a big deal, right? But a telelens professional camera could produce some material that then could be used in other ways that is then out of the control of the artist's camp. Mm-hmm. So a house photographer is more or less there to capture on behalf of the house, whether it be for just documenting the event or for social media, the venue's own personal social media, or even capturing down to like the setup and how things looked when that tour came in the building. And again, a lot of times tours won't allow that because that is then out of their control. And their answer is, we'll take the pictures and give the venue any pictures that they need on our behalf. So instead of the venue having their own person running wild and not in control of the tour has somebody that's in their control, takes the pictures that wants to be seen, gets approved by management, and then sends it to the venue to use for social media or just archival purposes.
How does it work? And maybe you don't have an answer for this, but how does it work maybe like politically, where an artist comes into a venue and then makes rules for the venue? Like, is it basically like, this is the artist, this wasn't in our deal? Like, is that where it have to be like almost built into the deal for it to really make sense?
Yeah. And we've kind of talked like, what are we doing and stuff. Like politics are a big thing. So not to say politics as a negative word, but just relationships with the band. Like if a management company gives the venue the right to have a personal photographer or a venue photographer there, and that venue then goes and violates what the tour asked of them, of course they're not going to allow it. That is going to be shut off. It's going to be a closed door.
Yeah.
Whereas
they ruin it for everybody.
Yeah, it ruins it for everybody. Whereas if you're a team player and you have a really good relationship with everybody, then there's trust there. And sometimes, it's the forum, so you're allowed special or it's Madison Square Garden, so there's special things, or it's even like, for instance, I'm sure you've shot at the Hollywood Bowl. It's like, it's almost impossible to shoot there. And that's on the venue side of things. Not like the venue is the one dictating what the tour could do. So it's different at every place is different.
Okay, that makes sense. So TLDR, it's confusing as fuck. And it's good. I mean, not really. It's not confusing. There's just a lot of different rules and a lot of different things at play. And capturing images that can be used in the wrong way is a pretty big liability. So to just not have it exist at all, it's not a huge cost.
Yeah.
And like you said, most artists have their own photographers these days. If you do want to become a photographer for a venue and be that person, I imagine it is the same route as any other job. You just got to reach out and apply.
Yeah.
And if it's a job they have open, they might take you for it.
Yeah. If you're a photographer and you're like, who should I reach out to? Reach out to the marketing department.
There you go.
Reach out to the booking department. Kind of obviously when it comes to any kind of reaching out and cold calling, it's like, have your stuff ready, give examples. Maybe you work for somebody like Getty Images or something like that, and you like have a name for yourself, and then the venue asks for you to be their personal photographer. Maybe you're somebody's best friend and you're a good photographer and they're the event manager and you get to be the house photographer, because that way there's no set rule on how to get
That's
in.
your job, Joey. You're the event manager.
Be my friend.
You heard it here, folks. No, yeah, I mean, and because it's such like these jobs, like let's say Joey was giving his friend this job. This person, Joey would need to trust and know for years, or trust really well, because if this person messes up, the repercussions are huge.
Yeah.
And not only on Joey personally, but on the venue and on the artist. And so that's why these jobs are not just a phone call away all the time when they become large level jobs. It's not so much they need to find somebody who is capable of doing it. They need to find somebody who's not only capable, but that's the floor. That's where it starts. You also need to be somebody they can trust, somebody that's honest, somebody that's, there's so many things. Mm-hmm. So the photography is the easy part. The hard part is everything else, I think.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. A few more questions here. How do venues, these are just random questions because we've got all types of people there. This is from Matt. And Matt wants to know, how do you guys deal with shipments coming in like merch every day for separate events? Like to what extent are venues responsible for tracking and organizing these shipments?
So that's a very good question. And I assume it's coming from somebody that has to have things shipped to a venue, and they probably have their items lost almost at every single venue, because it is a chaotic mess at most venues. That's another thing, like hiding. When I say don't hide, if you have a shipment of 20 boxes or a few pallets coming, like tell me that it's coming, instead of me getting a shipment to an unknown person that's on your tour and it doesn't even have the tour name on it, and I don't know who the sender is, and there's no...
You got to start opening boxes.
Yeah, so we're getting a bunch of free merch for some reason and we don't know why. But the best way to deal with it, and that's something that person could do on their end, is always include the tour that you're a part of. So say you're on a Jason Mraz tour, say it's Jason Mraz, put a phone number on that shipping label, put your name on the shipping label. It doesn't have to be first name, last name, building, address. It could be first name, last name, /tour, /contact, /mother-in-law, /whatever you want, as long as there's like a way to identify how long we're going to be holding on to it and who's it's going to. And even, if you're in the VIP and you're third party apart from the tour, then make it say VIP, make it say hold for, or put my name on it when, advance that you're sending shipments, and, ask if you could put my name on it. So when it comes, they say, hey, Joe, you got 9 pallets. And I'm like, okay, great. I know what that is.
I'm just going to start shipping stuff to venues. I
feel like everybody does, man. It's really...
No, I'm just going to send stuff.
Yeah.
Just random stuff.
No, that's what I'm saying. People do. That's like what we do. I love it when the tour has been gone for 4 days and you just got their entire shipment of like passes or something that comes in, and it's like, okay, how do we get this to you next? Because,
you can't even get in the venue without these guys.
Exactly.
Oh, that's wild. Well, that was a good question. Thank you, Matt. All right, another one here. So Aaron is a photographer, and they wanted to know what is, I always poke fun at the photographer relationships with venue security, and it's not as bad as I make it seem. There's just, if they're going to get in trouble with somebody, it's going to be security, as anybody. But what is usually the photographer relationship with venue security, and maybe I think they might be asking from like venue security's perspective, if that makes sense. Like, how are photographers viewed?
How are photographers viewed from the venue standpoint? Photographers
Yeah.
are viewed as people that are there and they're working, and they should be treated with respect to the fact that they're working. It's also quite often that you'll find photographers not following the rules. So you're on the lookout for that, because the emphasis comes from the tour. It's not that the venue like hates photographers, but it's like something that the tour has put forth and said, this is very important to us. So if you see it, something that's not going along with these rules, please enforce that. So, again, it's most of what we do is because there's somebody, whether it's a fire marshal or the tour, telling us what to do. There's no like hard feelings from tour security to a venue photographer. That's not a thing. It's more so that when a photographer doesn't follow the rules, it's very apparent, and there's repercussions to that. It's not harmless like some people think it is.
Don't do it, guys. Follow the rules. Yeah, I always get, one of my biggest things is when I was shooting, and it's usually first 3 flash free. Like, you shoot from the pit, don't use a flash. I'm always out after 3. Like, I'm usually out before the 3rd song's over. And when people don't get removed or security doesn't know and lets people stay or something, I'm like, not me. And I know I'm telling a story that's like tooting my own horn, but I just want to say, I'm just saying this because I believe in those rules so deeply that like you should listen to them even if somebody isn't enforcing them, because at least I think so. I don't know, because like you said, there's repercussions and they're not good for anybody.
There are repercussions, and we've had instances where like the tour's publicist knows what the song looks like on film. So if you're taking a picture that's outside of those 3 songs that they've approved, they know what the set looks like and the colors and everything, and they know that you took a picture when you're not supposed to. So then you could have somebody.
Really interesting.
Yeah, there's somebody that could be coming down and hunting you down after the fact, even though you did get away with it, and then all of a sudden, like, you're blackballed or something like that. You're not allowed on the list anymore. So rules are rules. They're annoying at times, but us as a building, we're not really the ones setting them. We're just the ones enforcing them, which is kind of a hard position to be in at times.
Do you guys have like a no-fly list for people who have messed up?
Yes.
Really badly?
Yes.
Wow. Do most venues have that?
Our marketing department's really good at knowing who should and shouldn't be there. And like anywhere, people have snuck in or pulled some strings to be places where they shouldn't be. And when we find that out, it's like no games are played at that point. You also have to view it from a security standpoint. Like if you're...
Oh, yeah, especially.
If you faked a pass and you found your way backstage, or you've talked somebody into letting you where you're not supposed to be, like, I don't see you as somebody that's harmlessly beat the system. I see you as somebody who has made an attempt to beat the system so that you could do something that we don't want you to do. And of course, it's like extreme, but the first thing that you think of is that you want to hurt somebody, because it's our job to make sure nobody gets hurt. So if you're doing the extreme to get to a place or get close to somebody, like, I have to assume that your intentions aren't going to be the greatest, because that's my job. And you might be the nicest person in the world. If you're that
desperate,
right,
then what are you up to? What are you doing?
Yeah,
no, that makes sense. I never thought of it that way because I just don't think that way, but I like understanding how it's looked at from, that makes sense. Okay, last question, and this one's pretty specific, but maybe I think we can learn something from it. So Shelly from the chat recently booked a venue, and their show was, it involved merch, hospitality. They had to pay some extra money to do all ages. There's a lot of things that were added to their bill, and they were wondering, why do venues... Like, if you're going to rent a venue, why is that not all put up front? Why is it like a hidden cost? Maybe you could just talk to how that's all priced out, because I don't. That's a pretty specific question. Yeah,
and it's a really good question, and it's questions that come up at every single settlement. So it's really good to know. There's more or less 2 ways.
The settlement, to break it down real fast for people who are newer, is just at the end of the night when the promoter pays the artist for playing the show.
Yeah, so on our end, the settlement is at the end of the night, it's finalizing all receipts. What did it cost? What is the tour or the promoter responsible for? What is any third party activation that did work responsible for? And then you're settling all the receipts. Either the promoter is going to get paid, or the venue is going to get paid, or there's going to be some transaction of money. And it's, for one show, you're dealing with a couple $1,000,000. So, how does it work that some things are included and some things aren't? There's two types of deals. There's a house net deal, and that's where everything is taken care of to a reasonable point on the front of house level. And then there's like a special events deal where you're going to pay every single position that's worked, you're going to pay out of pocket. So, for instance, 9 times out of 10, a concert for us is going to be a house net deal. And we're agreeing to pay for all expenses that take to put on a show within a reasonable cost. Things that we don't account for, you'll have to pay for all your own stagehand labor. You'll have to pay for any VIP activation above and beyond the show itself, because that's going to take additional personnel. There's usually going to be a time limit in there, a show window of, it's usually a 4-hour show window. And that's when like curfews come into play, and you hear people say like, oh, they're going to charge me $15,000 or $10,000 every 15 minutes. Well, it's costing, the venue has, 250 people working for them. And if you go over by an hour, well, multiply 250 people by $15 to $25 an hour. That's like a true expense that we're experiencing.
Yeah.
So it's always good when you're booking a show to really hammer that out and say, what am I responsible for and what am I not responsible for? Or why would I be, if you have anything above and beyond the act playing 4 hours on stage, like if there's, for instance, when we have acts that have large thrusts on their stage, and for anybody that doesn't know, it's the stage when it extends out into the crowd. Well, we've budgeted our shows to have, let's say, 10 security guards across the front, and you brought in a stage that requires 25 security guards. Well, that's on you. You brought the stage in. We're going to give you 10 of those 25, but you're going to have to pay for another 15, because
that makes sense.
When we booked this show, we booked it as a in-stage show, not an in-stage with a thrust and a B stage and a VIP riser and an activation and a red carpet. Like, so it's just really good if you're booking shows and you picked up on that. There's, I don't want to call them hidden expenses, but there's expenses associated. But also, if a venue's ever charging you and they're not telling you they're going to be charging you for things, like, push that shit back. Like, they shouldn't come to you by the end of the night.
Lay down the law.
Yeah. If you didn't approve to be charged for something, and that's best practices. If a venue's coming to you at settlement and say, here's a bunch of expenses that you incurred, and you didn't approve those expenses, or you weren't aware of those expenses before agreeing to doing anything, then you really shouldn't be held responsible for that. And that's a big part of my job leading up to the show, is communicating expenses. And when, a security manager comes to me and says, hey, I need to add 4 police officers, I tell him, okay, I'm going to order these, but it's going to cost you $350. Can I have
ordering a police officer?
Yeah. Can I have,
what a concept.
Like, can I have your signature saying that you approve this $350 to go to settlement? Because that's an additional expense that we didn't account for. So if you're not experiencing that kind of communication, then maybe reconsider who you're doing business with. And if it's your only choice.
That was very politely put.
Yeah. Just be open about it and push back. If they're not putting forward, if they're not being transparent, they're expecting to get pushed back for something. So it's not like out of line to do that.
No, that makes sense. We did all the questions and we did all the talking points. That means we did the whole podcast, Joey.
Right on, man.
How you feeling? That was a lot of information. My head kind of hurts.
I know. I guess I know more than I thought I knew. Or I could just talk a lot.
It's really weird. I feel like that's the case for a lot of things in this industry, or probably just all jobs in general. And I always think about when you get a new board game and you read the rules, and you might even already know how to play the board game, but when you actually have to read the rules of the game, you're like, how the hell is this 10 pages long?
Yeah.
This game is so easy, and it's so hard to rule from the rules. We're like, oh, when you actually write everything down, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But when you have it, like, you've learned it over the years, and it's just weird. So yeah, thank you so much, man. That was great.
Of course. I love this stuff. So definitely, like we said before, down to talk about it.
Last question. When you toured, shower shoes, no shower shoes, what's your vibe?
I was like, I would say 9 times out of 10, I wore shower shoes, only because the types of venues we were in were just the worst. But
rubbish.
If it wasn't,
Hey, respect.
I don't have to have shower shoes to go into a shower. I don't get grossed out too much. But when there's like mold talking to you as you're walking into the shower, I tend to wear shower shoes.
Hey, the Forum has really nice showers.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, they're amazing. It's better than my home shower.
High pressure.
So thank you so much. I look forward to meeting you in person. We'll stay in touch. And yeah, thank you so much, Joey. I appreciate your time, man.
Definitely. And I'll see you guys. Thanks for doing this. It's a lot of fun.